All right, so I'm going to show you how to make lanterns. So I have a slab already made, and now I'm going to use a paper template to cut out the body of the lantern. Now on this paper template, I've already drawn out sort of my idea of where the cutouts are going to be, and I'm going to line some of this up and straighten it out, but see if it works. Alright, so I want to line that up with the edge that I just cut. Now you can measure and cut out. You don't have to do a piece of paper like this is just how I want to do it. And I'm going to show you how to transfer these drawings onto the clay also. So I want to trace this on there. Drawing really lightly. So if the end of this, like this edge of the paper lines up with this edge of the paper, this middle section should be even with this other one. So I'm gonna lose some of the stuff on the end, and that's fine too. But all right, so now this is gonna be like the body of my lantern. All right, so now normally you can, if you're going to transfer your design, like this is where you want to cut things out on your lantern. You could do it once you build this. You can put this on here, and you can transfer these images by using a pen, like a pen tool, or whatever you're using to draw on. If it's sharp enough just to poke through the paper and make a little hole, you'll be able to put these on here. Now it would take me, it's going to take some time to do it, but also the paper that's here, like it's going to start soaking up the water, so you want to work pretty quickly. I'm not going to like poke holes on every single line. I mean, I may do the corners. Do a couple of points along the way. And then I can use a ruler on the pot and do it. I mean, or I could just draw it. It's fine. It'd be a little looser. I might like it better. Even if some things that I prefer to not be so rigid, but sometimes you need nice straight lines. I'm just hitting the corners. Now, if you have a more complicated design, you can certainly poke as many holes on here as you want, right? And then just connect the dots later. Make it easier on yourself. I just don't want to sit here and poke holes on video for 30 minutes, you know? And I'm not gonna cut these out yet. I'm just marking where they're gonna go, because some of these may disappear and I may have to redo it anyway, but I wanted you to see it before I get that far along. And this is how I, like any kind of image transfer I do, like this, if I'm taking a drawing or some design that I want to put on soft clay, then this is how I do it, all right? Okay, so I've got, now I should be able to take this up. All those little dots are gonna make me dizzy. Line up my paper. And then just kind of finish out this process here. Now I already have holes, so I gotta sort of find them. Should probably wear my glasses. Now I'm not sure how much of this slab I'm gonna use, like lengthwise, because I'm gonna wait and see till I'm gonna make. This is gonna be kind of an oval lantern, not square or not just completely round. Now you can use a form, just like using like when you made the last project, the closed form. You can certainly do that, but I'm not gonna do. I'm gonna build it without one. All right. Okay, so now I can cut this off. So I'm probably not gonna use that. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. So this is the length of my slab, right? And now I have marked it out where all these things are going to go. Now I can draw my lines. Now really the cutting out of these pieces, that's like one of the last things I'm going to do. Sometimes it's just easier to draw on something flat than it is drawing on the pot, but I mean, I'm not gonna, no, I say that as I keep drawing. But see, I didn't put that many holes. I'm just, and my lines are gonna be straight enough, and I'm gonna cut them. You know, when I start cutting, I'm gonna use a really sharp blade. I'm gonna use an X-Acto knife to cut with, but I need this clay to be stiffer. Right? And I don't want it dry, but I want it a nice, firm, leather hard state where I can still attach things to it and I can still clean it up, but it's pretty close to just being too hard to do anything. Like it's almost to a dried out state, but you can cut it, and when you cut it, it'll be nice and clean. So you have to use a sharp blade, and the blade's thin, right? An X-Acto blade is thin. So if I put a thin blade through wet clay right now, it really doesn't separate enough to really cut it. Like this blade, this Fetling knife, is a little wider and it's kind of dull, you know, and it's you can just cut right through stuff now, and it separates the pots or the parts of the pots. All right, so I'm gonna stop drawing that, but anyway, you can see, you know, that template, right, it really kind of helped line things up. You can do it this way, just connecting dots, right? Oops, a little crazy. But a lot of the surface stuff will go away. Now, I also added a texture to the slab, and I don't know how well you can see it, But so I kind of I like to play with the surface of the clay, even if I'm cutting pieces out. So, you know, the clay itself is important just as much as like cutting out designs for this lantern, right? I want enough light to come out of it, but I also want the surface of the clay and the pot itself to be good, right? If that's not good, I don't care how good your lantern cutouts are going to be, it's not going to be that great. Like, you want to put some effort into all of it. All right, let's move along. Okay, so I want to get this into like an oval shape. So I'm going to stand it up like this. I'm going to see what we have lengthwise. So I want then I did make the slab the other day, so it's not, it's not super wet, but it is wet enough, that I can still do a lot with it. So now I need to cut this, and what I want to do is I want to be able to get this curve here and this curve to kind of match up. So if I put that like that and kind of butt it in there, that's going to be okay, but it's not going to be great. So I want to cut at an angle. So from now on, like I need to pay attention to both the rim and the base, like how it's going to, like when I move it around, I have to cut this way, so whether or not you can see, I don't know. But I'm going to cut at an angle. That's going to be pretty close to one of those, but not exact. Yeah, I think this is going to be okay. So I cut it so I can get this curve and this curve to be even, but I need to attach this seam together. So I want to score and slip. Both sides, just like we always do. So I'm just kind of pinching that together. One of my cutouts is really close to that seam, which I'm not, we'll see how it goes, but it's a little bit of a concern. So I gotta make sure that this seam is really on there. It's long, short, long. Okay. So my template worked out pretty good. Like as far as like lining this thing up, like that's everything, like the ends line up. So I have like long, short, long, right? It works out when they connect. So that's a good thing. Gives me hope. Now if I can get the curve right. So I'm going to take my card. It's up here. Water a little closer. I'm going to bend the card so I'm working this curve. I don't want to, I mean, if I have to lose some marks of where I'm going to cut out, I will, because I can redraw them. That's fine. Because I got to get the shape of the pot right. Getting closer, right? I still need to, it's gonna take some maneuvering around, but I've got that outside seam pretty much ready to disappear. Sometimes you got, don't forget about the bottom, right? The bottom, you gotta push out some too. If you do all your work up here, right, down here is gonna be messed up because you haven't really paid attention. So pay attention to moving the whole thing at one time. Addressing the inside seam. Make sure I have good coverage there. All right, I think I got it. All right. So, I mean, it's not perfect, right? But it's gonna work out okay. All right, so now I basically have the body of my lantern. So then the cutouts would come a little later. So now I have to think, how am I going to have a permanent base with a lid, or am I going to close this up and have the body be the lid over a base? So those are choices that you're going to have to make with your lantern, right? So some of the designs that I showed you yesterday, you know, there's different types, right? But you have to be able to get the light in it, the candle or whatever it is you're going to put in, have to be able to get it in and out, right? I think I want to make a top, like make this permanent, and then have this be like removable, right, from a base. So I'll make a base for this later. So what I want to do now is attach a top to this, so I can get rid of some of this, make it even. And I can make that top with the same kind of design. Maybe, well, it may not be big enough for that. I can make a smaller version of it so it matches up, right? Because I want, like I said, you know, if you're putting a real candle in here, there has to be enough air flow to keep the fire burning, right? All right, so I'm going to use this clay because it's the same, has the same texture going on. Flip this over, and then flip this over. Now I'm going to trace where this is going to go. And this is a good time, like now I'm looking at the bottom. The bottom's not as good as the top. Like I had the top just right. Yeah, that's better. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and score this part. Now I'm going to cut this out. So I know my seam was here, so when I flipped it over, the seam it was still over here. I'm just going to make a little mark. I want to cut straight. I'm trying not to have a lot of overhang on this because there's not a lot of room to play around. I want this to be a pretty clean shoulder. So take your time, cut. Since I like this, the flat part, the part that's going to be the top, I'm going to leave it on the paper on the table right now. So when I flip it over, I'm trying to keep the top somewhat flat, right? I don't want it to slump down right away. So now pick this up, line up all my edges. Let's get some downward pressure. It would be a good idea to get in there with a coil on the bottom, on the inside, but because I can't reach it, now there's some cleanup I'm gonna have to do when I flip it over, and that's okay. I'm just trying to get enough pressure on this, and then I'll roll it some when I flip it over on the top. Alright, so now let's flip it over. Yeah, so there's a lot of cleanup here, but I'm going to use my roller to make sure this attachment is good. I don't want to take away too much of my. This also will help, like I can do this. You can try a pencil or something like that if you want to try something like this. Or if you have some printmaking equipment. I like to I can give myself a little angle with this. So I have, once I started using this with hand building, even with some wheel throwing things, when I make oval pots on the wheel and make slab bases, I'll use this too. This makes a nice edge. And it's a good way to put pressure on the outside or any seams that you want. But you can use a rolling pin, I mean, you can use whatever. This is just small and easy to use for something like this. I mean, this is made for printmaking, right? You put ink on a block, and it's called a brayer. Yeah, not as clean as I'd like it right now. Because it's sort of like looking down on it, my form was somewhat distorted by that angle, so I'm taking it out. I haven't really thought about it. You could probably use, like, they make small little paint rollers. Probably use something like that. Have to go to the hardware store. Yeah, that's getting better. All right, so now I have, this is connected, right? I'll end up putting something like that on there for lights, but I want to make it so that it has a way to pick this up, so a handle, either something on the side, because if it's a candle inside there, this thing's gonna get hot because there's fire. So I'm thinking of, if it's, I'm for my lantern, I'm thinking of using like lights, like put small Christmas lights inside it. So I mean, it'll still get warm, but I think it would be kind of cool to do that. So we'll try it. This needs to come down some. This one side is a little off, right? It looked better before I put the top on it. So I'm just putting a little pressure on it. So really everything up to this point, I mean, other than me talking about cutting out pieces, I mean, making a lantern is like making any other pot, right? You're just trying to think about your form first, what you're actually going to do to it. So, I've drawn out, I've traced out some of those, and I still have more to do. But I'm not going to put all that on video, right? I'm going to have them ready to go. So the next thing I'd want to do is make like a tray for this to sit on. Okay. Now because I want it to somewhat be connected to it, so it doesn't just slide on and off, but it has to come up and down. So there has to be some kind of connection to it. I'm gonna figure that one out and show you on Tuesday when we get back, because I feel like we've been doing this long enough. I mean, I've got the base, and now and you know how to do this. So you just have to come up with your ideas for it, and then I'll have the rest, I'll have it ready to go. All right, so I'm gonna stop for today. And this is, these are all gonna be cut out, right? All the way around, there's gonna be something on the top that's cut out too. So that's lantern part 1.